Jacob Gall getting ready for one of those college football all-star games, also getting ready for the possibility of being a part of the National Football League and all that goes with it. He's in Houston training. He played at Buffalo and, of course, played at Baylor, part of the Big 12 and Sugar Bowl championship, and also last year's team. Jacob with Paul Craig and David Smoke. Thank you, Jacob, for being a part of the show. Is now just all focused on getting ready for the game or working out, getting ready for some sort of combine? What is it right now on your table?
Thanks for having me, guys. And, right now I'm just kind of, doing really both. We kind of have 2 sessions right now each day for working out. And the morning's kind of like a regular workout, regular lift, and some agility stuff. And then the second part of the day is really more like combine type stuff. We're working like 5-10-5, working L drill, broad jump, things like that. It's kind of both right now.
You were a player who transferred into the portal from a Group of 5 team into a Power 5 team. You see that a lot more and more recently. How much did that help your development as a player to jump from Buffalo into the Big 12?
Yeah, I think especially for a guy like me who's probably a little more undersized, definitely underdeveloped and things like that, just not being a big recruit. I think it definitely helps me, not only with just like visibility, but I think there's a big confidence thing that goes with it. I think when you're playing at those smaller schools, you really don't have the confidence to go against like the bigger schools that you play probably once a year. So like a season where I'm playing Power 5 schools 12 times a year, you just gain a lot more confidence in your ability. Even if you might not have changed any ability, you just gain that confidence because you are playing better opponents every week.
Jacob, what was the kind of roller coaster like as far as the past couple of years ago? I mean, last year, obviously, incredible run to finish the season, champs in the Big 12 and in the Sugar Bowl. And then this year, a lot of expectations coming in. And, you know, the close games that maybe you won a year ago went the other way this time and just a tough ending. Can you kind of explain just the degree of separation between the thrills last year and some of the tribulations this year?
Yeah, I think that's a normal thing. I think just, you know, you have a good year. Guys, you play the same teams again, really, in the Big 12. You're playing everybody that's exactly the same. You think you're kind of just what you were last year, and you're not. And the other teams know that they got to do something different. And you think you're kind of doing the same thing. You'll be okay. And it's just not like that. I mean, you got to really take every game and every year. It's got to be different than the year past. And I think you see it in the close games and things like that. You keep thinking like, oh, we're going to pull out, and we're going to pull through and things like that. We're going to pull this win out. But it just doesn't always go your way. A lot of close games. We have a really young team. I think that plays a part in it. And I think next year the team's going to be very experienced in the skill positions and things like that. So I have a lot of hope for them.
We heard that a little bit from Dave Aranda. And really, it just kind of seemed like last year's team with a lot of super seniors, guys who went to the NFL, and, of course, transfers like you and others that were a part of a deep and experienced offensive line. Was there almost like young and no middle section of age and experience, and then those who had been around for a long time? Was it kind of a disconnect there?
Yeah, I mean, it could be like that sometimes. Especially when you have guys that I guess new water. I mean, we have guys that are a lot of 6th-year guys, and then you have a lot of like 1st and 2nd-year guys. So I mean, there's a 4-year age gap between I guess a 6th-year guy and like a sophomore or something like that, and there's like a 6-year age gap between me and like the incoming freshman. And we have some incoming freshmen that played and stuff too. No one really on the line side, so no one like direct contact, but it just kind of, you just feel so much different than them. It's hard to connect with those guys, but you got to play together and you got to learn each other so quickly. But yeah, it can create some difficulties. It's definitely nothing that can kind of put a season to bed or anything like that, but it does make things a little more difficult.
Baylor has to replace 5 of you guys on the offensive line next season. How do you feel about the depth behind all the starters and what Eric Mateos can do to get those guys ready? And he's got a couple transfers coming in too.
Yeah, I mean, I have complete trust in Coach Mateos. I think he's one of the best in the business. And I think he's proved that over these past couple of years that he's one of the best offensive line coaches. Not only like I guess, the best coach, but he's kind of like one of the best like people, I guess, in coaching too. So I think you have a great coach, you have a great culture, great coaches around him too. You could really throw in anybody, and I know he's going to develop the guys, and they're going to get a ton better. And I know he's already got one guy I guess he's got two. But whoever he gets and whoever he develops, he's going to be just fine, I think.
Jacob, how did you see Dave Aranda over the last couple years kind of grow, change, modify, what have you? What was just kind of your take on watching him develop as a head coach?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is kind of the adjustments that he makes to himself, the way he sees problems and how he adjusts himself to fix those problems. I mean, I think his accountability is incredible. I think every single issue he sees, he puts on himself. Mm-hmm. And I think that's a great aspect of him. And just the way he tries to figure out problems is great, and how he changes himself to kind of adapt to those issues.
Jacob, I have some of the inside information on you. I'm going to put you to a quiz. What was your specialty in somehow getting defensive linemen who went up against you to rip off your helmet?
I know it seems there's I have a knack for that. Happens a good amount. I think maybe just me being shorter, I think, is how I get people to do it. I play a little bit lower, so when people strike, if you get a guy that's striking Grant, who's 6'4", and a guy that's striking me, who's 6'2", or Connor that's 6'7", another guy strike me, and I'm a lot shorter. My chest is a lot lower, I guess. So they're not, and theirs is a lot higher. So they're just hitting me in the head a lot more, things like that. But you can also have a little mental game with it too. You can kind of get in people's heads, things like that, and then kind of spices things up on the field, and then they're going to end up doing something dumb. I think that happened to Oklahoma. You just block a guy to the whistle, and they don't like that a lot, especially when they're not particularly close to the play, or they're not probably going to make the play or something like that. And you're just kind of keep doing your job, because you never know when the ball can cut back or anything weird that can happen. So you just keep playing. So I think it's kind of a two-part thing. Yeah, just me being a little bit shorter, playing a little bit lower, and then me just kind of playing hard.
Jacob, look, you're working out now to try to play on Sundays. You obviously in the Big 12 played on Saturdays, but when you were in the MAC, that MACtion happens on Tuesdays and Wednesdays. What was that like?
Oh, God.
Yeah, it's definitely different. Especially when so it wouldn't be nearly as bad if we were in the South. But you're in the North, you're in Ohio, you're in New York, you're in Illinois, you're in Indiana, all those places. It gets cold. So when it's a Tuesday night, and they only do MACtion in November, it's a Tuesday night in November, you just got done with classes for the week, or maybe you just had like an exam or something, and then you got a game that's 20 degrees and snowing, and no one's at the game. But tons of people are watching on TV, but no one can come to the game because they all have to either have school or work. So, and it's not like not a ton of the people come to the games anyway in the MAC. It's just a different thing. But it's definitely tough. I think it helps prepare players for, I guess, like any scenario or anything like that, because you're playing in these cold weather, these night games. No one's really there. Like, you kind of find out really like who you are and like your motivation and things like that.
So Saturday mornings of game day, did you send out text messages in what would be all caps, screaming voice? How was that?
I used to send like voice messages. It was me like getting up, like whenever we get up, like 7 or 8 in the morning, like game day. I guess it was like the 11 o'clock game, which you've had a lot of in the past 2 years. You get up at 6, and I would just like give a nice little yell, nice little scream in the morning, send it in the voice chat, kind of wake everybody up, kind of show some energy.
One of the things Coach Mateos did say about you when he graded film of the offensive line, when he tested on Fridays, he always tested you last because it gave him the most confidence. Did you ever know that?
So I guess you're saying like in meetings?
Yeah,
no. What he said?
Yeah, he graded the offensive line test on Fridays.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, I mean, that makes sense. I mean, I'm the one making the calls out there. I'm getting everybody in line. So I'm the one that's got to be on my stuff 100% of the time. so I can make sure everybody else has a chance and knows what they're doing. So I'm always prepared. So I'm glad he knows that, and glad he uses me for confidence, because I use him for confidence all the time.
Jacob, what was your biggest thrill in green and gold?
My biggest thrill?
Yeah. Or favorite moment, what have you?
Oh, I think it's got to be the Oklahoma game last year.
Okay.
The home game that we had against them. Never really experienced anything like that. I mean, you can always say the Big 12 championship's always awesome. The Sugar Bowl's awesome. Those are great things you can look back on. But when I think about like a game where I was like, oh, the offensive line's like, we're here. It was really the Oklahoma game, and just an exciting game because we stormed the field twice. I don't know when last time we beat Oklahoma before that, and that really kind of like cemented our status that year of being like a top dog in the Big 12.
You know, that offensive line did maul people. Both sides of the ball just beat people up in that 2021 year. When you think about those to your left and right, some, of course, are moving on, and a lot of them basically are moving on. What do you think about those guys in your position group as far as in the offensive line room?
Yeah, I mean, I love those guys. I mean, we hit the war every day. We're fighting. It's the same with the D-line, too. I mean, those guys made us a ton better, and we made them a ton better every day. I mean, I told Apu that a bunch. I was like, I don't know if I could go out there and play how I play if I wasn't playing against you every week. If I wasn't going 4 days of practice against you, one of the best D-linemen in the country. So I think there's just so much love for those guys and so much appreciation for how hard they worked and how much they made me better, and then how much I can make them better.
Jacob, were you comfortable being a leader? Is that something that was natural to you, being a leader, or is that something you had to kind of learn to be?
It's definitely something I had to get more comfortable with, especially transferring. I think it's a lot easier to be a leader out of school when you're there, when you've kind of grown up really with most of the team. When you start there when you're 18, you're 17, you're going 4 years with these guys, and you know every single person when they come in, and you know what year they are and what their major is because you know them, because you see them when they come in each year. But when you're a transfer, I think it's a little bit harder. And you just really don't know everybody as well because you kind of get everybody at once. It's not like a little like filter in each year with each guy. So it takes a little bit more time. For me, I would say it wasn't as much the first year, which I really didn't need to be because our leadership was so good. With like Jalen Petrie, Terrell Bernard, it was easy. But this past season, I had to learn a lot of leadership, and I had to grow a lot myself.
Was that a bigger void losing all those guys than maybe people on the outside expected, and maybe even some people on the inside expected it to be?
Yeah, I mean, those guys are top level playmakers. Whenever you're in a situation, even Taekwondo, things like that, you're like, well, we know we have this guy. This guy, if anything's going to happen, it's going to be this guy that's going to do it. And you have things like that. When you lose big players like that, it's always tough to fill in. But players aren't made overnight. It's going to take years like this for players to grow. Terrell Bernard and Jalen Petrie had years like this where they had to grow before they became those things. So maybe this is just a growing year, and there's going to be guys that are going to really spring up next year and be just like those guys.
Jacob, not to open a fresh wound, but the TCU loss obviously was very tough, to look back on, and I can only imagine at the time as well. But as you know, they're playing for the national championship later on tonight. I don't know how many, if anybody ever would have predicted that, even when you guys saw them late in their run. But your thoughts looking back on that, and do you have like a bit of a personal scouting preview you can give us just from your perspective, having been a guy who was in the trenches and playing this defense?
Yeah, I mean, they have a solid defense. They have a good linebacker core, good, obviously, secondary. I think their D-line is decent. I don't think they're star-studded. So I could see the battle being lost in the trenches by them. I could see Georgia O-line kind of bullying them, or at least trying to. So I think if Georgia puts the ball on the ground a lot, I think they can control this game. And as long as the defense holds up, doesn't let any big plays, they kind of bend, don't break. So I think that's really how TCU wins games. Is they hit a lot of big plays, a lot of big passes. Duggan and Quinton, a lot of big plays. So as long as this defense can just bend, don't break, and just slow down the TCU or offense. And then if Georgia can control the ball on the ground, I think they can win it. I think Georgia has the advantage in this and can win it. But I think if Georgia defense doesn't play well and they're giving up big plays, I think TCU can really has a chance at it.
Well, that's what Ohio State did against Georgia in a lot of ways last week. The wide zone for a center, which means when they have to get out wide and you guys are pushing that's got to be pretty difficult. But does the fact that you talked about your height, undersized a little bit, does that make that easier for you to get where you need to be in the wide zone scheme?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I talked about this all the time with some other guys. If I had to block Apu in a different scheme, like say a power scheme or inside zone scheme or any counter scheme or anything like that, I'd have a lot more trouble. I'd have no chance because I have to go toe-to-toe with a lot bigger guys and just really not my forte. So being in a wide zone scheme is really why I wanted to come to Baylor, because I know you have to run with me the whole game. And you have to guess which way I'm going to be going, if I'm going left or right, which way we're reaching, which way we're going. And if you're playing zero nose, it's gonna be a tough day because you're gonna have to keep up with me the whole time. So that was my thing. I don't have to block you. I don't really have to push you out of the way. I just have to get in front of you. I have to reach you. I have to beat you to this gap. So I think it just played more to my strength. Mm-hmm. So I think it might be harder for other centers because they're bigger guys and they're people movers. But I've always been more of a reach guy, positioning guy, and I think that's just how the system kind of plays to my strengths.
Jacob, good luck with the bowl game prep, all-star game prep. Also, of course, down the road, and the combine and all the workouts, and hope that you'll land and get drafted, have a chance to do whatever you want to do in the NFL with what you've done at Buffalo and Baylor. I think that obviously everything looks good for you.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, we'll be in touch.
At Pro Day.
Yeah, we'll be in touch at Pro Day, and then also the all the way up until the NFL draft as well in April. All right, when we come back.